Number 9. Lulu Souza. After meeting in Houston in 2007, divorced single dad Ramon Souza and Maria de Lourdes Durantes, or Lulu, got married and opened a gym together. But things changed between them after Lulu became an American citizen. She was no longer warm and loving, according to Ramon, and she frequently reminded him that she was now entitled to the same rights as and benefits as him. Ramon didn't understand exactly what his wife meant. After all, he had always tried to respect her and didn't think he was trampling on her rights in any way. It wasn't long before he noticed the couple's money disappearing, but he fought to make the marriage work, even as Lulu became increasingly cold and distant. He finally gave up in 2015. The estranged partners entered acrimonious divorce proceedings while continuing to live under the same roof. As if that wasn't awkward enough, the police contacted Ramon and told him that Lulu was planning to kill him for insurance money and ownership of their shared assets. A boxer who knew the couple had overheard Lulu talking about wanting her husband dead at the gym one day. He volunteered to find someone to do the job and Lulu took the bait, but he went to the police instead. To avoid arousing Lulu's suspicion, Ramon carried on as usual until the planned assassination date. With help from law enforcement, he posed for proof photos of his body that the hitman had agreed to provide to Lulu. When she saw a picture of Ramon lying in a shallow pit with what looked like a bullet wound to the head, she smiled. But as it turned out, the joke was on her the whole time. Lulu pleaded guilty to solicitation of murder and received a sentence of up to 20 years. Ramon forgave her but moved on with his life and found true love with a new partner. Number 8. Nathan Carman. In 2016, the crew of a commercial ship found 22-year-old Nathan Carman adrift at sea on a life raft. He had spent 8 days floating aimlessly in the Atlantic after his boat sank off Rhode Island during a fishing trip. Carman's mother, Linda, died in the sinking. Her body was never found. The tragedy came 3 years after someone fatally shot Nathan Carman's grandfather, a wealthy Connecticut businessman named John Chukalis. Carman inherited around $550,000 from his grandfather's estate, but reportedly blew through it all shortly before the boating accident. Relatives had always suspected Nathan of being responsible for Chukalis' death, and when Linda was presumed lost at sea, they believed the young man had engineered her death and disappearance. And they didn't have to look too hard to find a motive. As Linda Carman's sole heir, Nathan stood to inherit around $7 million after his mother's death. Prosecutors would later contend that there was an ongoing family feud over the estate. He continued to walk free until 2022, when federal authorities indicted him on a slew of charges, including murder on the high seas and 7 fraud-related counts. Prosecutors are accusing him of scuttling the boat and have pointed out how the insurance company refused to pay Carman for the boat's loss because there was evidence that he had deliberately rendered the vessel unseaworthy. Carman maintains his innocence from behind bars amid ongoing trial delays at his lawyer's request. Number 7. Blake Libel. Ayanna Kasayan's mother reported her missing in 2016 after she suddenly fell out of touch, which was extremely out of character. Police tried contacting Ayanna's live-in fiancé, Canadian real estate heir Blake Libel, and they knocked on the front door of the couple's home in West Hollywood, California, but got no response. They eventually forced their way in and found a mattress barricading the door. Officers found Libel hiding in the master bedroom behind yet another barricaded door. He claimed Ayanna was at the hospital and refused to come out. When the police finally made their way inside the bedroom, they found Ayanna dead with her scalp removed. She had lost nearly half the blood in her body, and the scene was horrifying beyond what words can describe. Numerous news sources described it as the grisliest murder in the history of West Hollywood, and possibly in all of Los Angeles. Libel had moved to California with dreams of making it big as a graphic novelist and a film director. Unlike many aspiring artists, he had ample money to live off of thanks to his trust fund. His motive for murdering Ayanna remains unclear to this day. Some speculate that he had an obsession with gore and was acting out a fantasy similar to a storyline in one of his graphic novels. Prosecutors, on the other hand, painted Libel as a power-hungry control freak who was jealous over the amount of time and attention Ayanna was giving to their child. He was convicted of first-degree murder and was sentenced to life in prison without parole. Number 6. Hans Christian Rausing. As the heir to a multi-billion-dollar Swedish packaging fortune, Hans Christian Rausing had the luxury of directing his future without having to worry about money. Instead of going into the family business, he spent the younger part of his adulthood traveling the world. He ended up in drug rehab in the US, where he met his wife Eva. The couple married in 1992 and went on to build a rehab center in Barbados. They also donated millions of dollars to drug awareness and addiction prevention charities and organizations. But the couple's own problems with drugs were far from over. In 2008, they were arrested for allegedly trying to sneak small amounts of heroin and crack into the United States Embassy in London. Addiction consumed the pair as they became increasingly isolated from their friends and family. They retreated to a room in their London mansion and banned anyone from entering. In 2012, Hans was arrested on suspicion of driving under the influence of drugs. It led to the discovery of Eva's decomposing corpse in the squalid room where the couple had spent most of their time in recent years. She had died 2 months earlier and was found on a bed beneath a pile of clothes. Rausing pleaded guilty to delaying the burial of Eva's body and received a suspended prison sentence while he underwent a mandatory 2-year drug rehab program. At his sentencing, he said that he didn't have a very coherent memory of the events leading up to Eva's death and admitted that he didn't report it because he didn't want her to leave. Number 5. Kenneth Atkinson and Nathan Detroit. 34-year-old Ray Atkinson Jr. and his fiancée, 29-year-old Natasha Newby, were bludgeoned to death in Bend, Oregon in 2020. Their bodies were found in a home that was previously owned by Atkinson's late father, Ray Sr., who had died the previous year. At the time, Ray Jr. was entangled in a dispute with his brother, Kenneth Atkinson, over their father's estate. Ray Sr. had left behind no will, leaving the brothers at odds over the $400,000 he left behind. Authorities suspected Kenneth of masterminding the crime and hiring his nephew, Nathan Detroit, to carry out the hit. After more than a year of investigating, they charged Kenneth Atkinson and Nathan Detroit each with 2 counts of first-degree murder and 2 counts of conspiracy to commit first-degree murder. While the arrests marked a major step forward in the case, the wait for justice continues for the victims' loved ones. Kenneth's trial is slated to begin in late 2023, while Nathan's trial is scheduled for early 2024. Number 4. Alki David. Until relatively recently, Greek-American businessman Alki David was known as the heir to a multi-billion-dollar Coca-Cola fortune and as the successful owner of numerous companies, including a modeling agency and a streaming website. He had experienced some legal problems in the past, but his life really started to fall apart in 2019 when he was arrested on the Caribbean island of St. Kitts for allegedly having more than $1.3 million worth of cannabis on board his private jet. That same year, a jury ordered David to pay $11 million to a former employee who accused him of firing her when she turned down his advances. He has steadfastly refused to pay the settlement and has been uncooperative with court proceedings meant to resolve the matter. David claims to be broke and bled dry of funds, even though his worth was estimated at $2.8 billion around the time the initial judgment against him was made. During a hearing to determine the value of his assets, he allegedly launched into a bizarre tirade about conspiracy theories and corruption. He alleged that he had somehow been set up, although he didn't make much sense, and the judge refused to entertain the rambling diatribe. David was a no-show at the next scheduled hearing. His lawyer, Dana Cole, told the judge that his client had been on a downward spiral in recent months, describing the episode as akin to a mental health crisis. There have reportedly been talks about placing David under a conservatorship, which would mean that a trustee would be appointed to manage his financial affairs, giving him little to no control over his money. He most recently made headlines for verbally lashing out at the California State Bar office in downtown Los Angeles. Number 3. Vorayuth Yoovidhya. In 2012, Red Bull heir Vorayuth Yoovidhya was accused of the hit-and-run death of a police officer in Bangkok, Thailand. Police traced a trail of brake fluid to the estate of the country's second-richest family, where they found a badly damaged Ferrari. A servant was initially blamed, but Vorayuth was found to have excessive alcohol in his blood, which he claimed was from drinking at home. He was charged with speeding, fleeing the scene of an accident, and reckless driving causing death. Yet he managed to evade authorities for a decade after fleeing Thailand in a private jet. In the meantime, his family paid the victim's family around $100,000. For years, Vorayuth made one excuse after another for not turning himself in, often claiming he was out of the country on business. Photos that surfaced told a different story of a globe-trotting trust fund baby who shamelessly ignored his legal case while living the high life. It took 5 years for an arrest warrant to be issued, and an investigation team was disbanded fairly early on in the case amid allegations of covering up Vorayuth's actions. In 2020, Thai authorities dropped all charges against Vorayuth, sparking outrage among the general public over what felt to many like an obvious case of privilege prevailing over the law. Protests erupted in the streets of Bangkok, and many demonstrators were punished. The charges were reissued later that year, only to be dropped again in 2022. Number 2. Anthony Prate. 48-year-old Malgorzata Margaret Daniel was found stabbed to death in her Schaumburg, Illinois apartment in 2019. Authorities charged her boyfriend, 55-year-old eye doctor Anthony Prate, with first-degree murder. He was initially locked up at the Cook County Jail, where dozens of phone calls with family members were recorded. In the conversations, Prate could be heard instructing relatives to liquidate more than $1 million in assets and transfer property out of his name in case there's any weird lawsuits. Prate eventually bonded out and was released on an ankle monitor to his mother's home. He was still awaiting trial in late 2021 when he died from COVID-19 related complications, but the drama over his money was far from over. The victim's daughters filed a wrongful death suit against Prate's heirs. When the complainant's attorneys caught wind of Prate's conversations with family members about making money and assets disappear, they filed amended complaints accusing Prate and his alleged co-conspirators of fraudulently transferring assets. These jailhouse conversations were used as the main basis for the lawsuits. If successful, then it means that Prate's surviving loved ones may have to cough up some of the money they're accused of moving around. Another lawsuit filed on behalf of the victim's estate sought the $300,000 Prate had posted for bail. Number 1. Tracy Grissom. There was no questioning whether Tracy Grissom killed her estranged husband, Hunter Grissom, in 2012. She approached him at his workplace and shot him 6 times at point-blank range. But her level of guilt under the eyes of a jury would depend entirely on why. Tracy's defense lawyer, Warren Freeman, argued that his client acted in defense of herself and her children. He said that Tracy went to Hunter's work to take photos that would prove he was earning an income and could afford the $2,100 monthly alimony payments she was asking for as part of their divorce settlement. Freeman also said that Tracy suffered brutal spousal abuse that left her with permanent injuries that required her to wear a colostomy bag. Hunter allegedly told Tracy that he was going to make it so that nobody would ever want her again, and threatened to kill her if she reported the abuse to police. But according to the prosecutor, Tracy was motivated by the prospect of collecting on a $100,000 insurance policy in Hunter's name. In a statement, Attorney General Luther Strange accused Tracy of casting false blame on the victim and stressed the importance of convicting her in the case. The jury found her guilty, but one of the jurors asked the judge for leniency due to the alleged abuse that Tracy endured. She was sentenced to 20 years to life in prison and will become eligible for parole in 2029. Thanks for watching. Would you rather make headlines as the disowned black sheep of an ultra-wealthy, world-famous family, or as a disgraced mega lottery winner who stupidly squandered a $50 million payout in just a few years? Let us know in the comments below, and don't forget to subscribe. See you next time. Bye.